All right. I'd like to call this meeting of May the 4th, 2020 meeting of the Hyde County Board of Commissioners to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here on the mainland and Tom, who's joining us by video, and I'd like to welcome all of the people on Facebook Live. And this meeting will be recorded to be available for viewing tomorrow on the county website. And for those that, who we have here in the attendance, we have Commissioner Shannon Swindell, Commissioner Earl Pugh, Commissioner Ben Simmons. We have County Manager Chris Noble, Attorney Fred Holscher, Clerk to the Board Lois Stokesbury, and Sheriff Guar Cahoon in the audience. And we also have Rumley Everett with us, and our building in the buildings department, Ms. Jane Hodges. And we have Tom Paul joining us from home. He is attending on the video. We also have by telephone Justin Gibbs, our emergency manager, our health director Luana Gibbs, and extension agent Natalie Wayne. That I would ask Commissioner Swindell if he would lead us in prayer.
We bow your head. Father God, we come to you and thank you first and foremost for the gifts of grace and mercy, Lord. We come asking wisdom and oversight over this, Lord. We ask for comfort for those. We ask for guidance in these matters in this county and this state, Lord. May everything said and done be here in accordance with thy will. These things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Will, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This notebook be a little tight. We have an amended agenda before you, and the addition to that agenda was under item to consider the resolution to ratify board action amendment number 4. Are there any additions to or changes to the agenda other than that?
Yes, sir. I would like to table the District 2 Recovery Court presentation to June 1st. That's Kristen Smith Beasley. Like it's under presentations. We'll table that District 2 Recovery Court presentation until Ms. Beasley can join us on the 1st. We will also please table under items of consideration number 6, life and health insurance renewal by Ms. Tammy Blake. We will also hear that item on June the 1st.
Any other?
No, sir.
Anybody have any other changes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Have a motion by Commissioner Simmons. Do I hear a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Swindell. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. And we've had Commissioner Toppin has, James Toppin has just joined us in the meeting. Welcome, James. All right, we have the minutes before you. From the April the 6th meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Have a motion by Commissioner Simmons. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Swindell. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. We have a public hearing on the Ocracoke Development Ordinance Amendment. Do I hear a motion to enter public hearing?
So moved.
Have a motion by
I'll second that.
Commissioner Paul and a second by Commissioner Swindell. All those in favor, let me know, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Public hearing is now open. And I will turn that over to Manager Noble.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to give a little bit of background on these two minor changes to, proposed minor changes to the Ocracoke Development Ordinance. The Ocracoke Planning Board convened, it was myself and Commissioner Paul working with the Planning Board to ask for two changes to the current Ocracoke Development Ordinance. The first change being to Section 36-173, Table of Nonconforming Structures, and the second change to Section 36-174, Table of Development Standards. Now, both of these ordinance changes have been received and approved and recommended by your Ocracoke Planning Board, and they've also been properly advertised for your consideration. The first change to our ODO, Chapter 36, Section 173, it changes a timeline for redevelopment of non-conforming structures. So within Ocracoke Village, if there is a non-conforming situation that may exist, prior to this amendment change, any destroyed non-conforming building could be rebuilt to its original dimension if a permit for the rebuilding of that structure was applied for within 180 days. The Planning Board asked the Board of Commissioners to adopt a change to the ordinance that would give owners 365 days from the date of destruction to apply for a building permit to fix their non-conforming structure. Thereafter that, it shall not be rebuilt, but the Planning Board thought that that extra time would be a reasonable change. The second change to the Code of Ordinances is under Section 36-174, and as all you are all aware, after the destruction that occurred on the island due to Dorian, there have been many structures that have been elevated. One of those structures in particular is our United Methodist Church, and we added within our code that no structure or appurtenance attached to any structure could go over 35 feet maximum building height except chimneys, antennas, and we added church steeples along with the existing weather instruments. So we added church steeples as one of those exclusions that can go above 35 feet in the ODO. And with that explanation, I will turn it to Commissioner Paul to add anything that he would like to add to those two small ODO changes.
Thank you. No, that's a good, clear description, and neither of these are, difficult issues. There was unanimity among everyone there, members of the planning board as well as members of the public. So I recommend that we take action on this following the hearing.
Any other comments?
Donnie, I don't believe we received any public comment for this public hearing, did we, sir?
We did not.
We did have quite a bit of adequate public comment through the planning board process.
Okay. If there are no other comments, do I hear a motion to adjourn this public hearing?
So moved.
So move.
Have a motion by Commissioner Simmons and second by Commissioner Paul to adjourn the public hearing. All those in favor, let me know, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. We are adjourned. Now we have another public hearing on the Hyde County Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance.
Mr. Commissioner Pugh, can we at this point take a vote to amend the ODI?
Yes, I'm sorry. Well,
Is that the proper procedure now that we've closed the public hearing? At what point do we vote?
yes, according to our attorney, that's proper procedure. I believe under the recommendation of Commissioner Paul, that, would you, have a motion to approve the,
Yes,
ODO ordinance amendment?
I will move that we amend the Ocracoke Development Ordinance as presented.
Second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Paul, a second by Commissioner Swindell. Is there, any other discussion? Not all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, now we have the Hyde County Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance, and I would like to have a motion to enter into public hearing. Have a motion by Commissioner Simmons. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Swindell. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are in, public hearing is open on Hyde County Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance. Yes.
I would like to give a little bit of background information in regard to this particular item, and then allow Commissioner Paul as well. And then, of course, any comment that Ms. Hodges has, because she has been great at being our floodplain administrator. As you gentlemen know, our new flood maps will go into effect in Hyde County on June the 19th, 2020. If Hyde County would like to adopt anything so we must adopt our new flood maps by June 19th, 2020. But if we want to put any additional provisions in there, we need to adopt a local ordinance to incorporate those additional provisions. We've had several public hearings on this issue, and Tom has worked diligently to have several public forums to discuss this with the planning board on Ocracoke, and had a recommendation and I'm going to let him review, if that's okay, Tom, what the recommendation was from the planning board and what some of the concerns have been since we had that planning board meeting. And after Tom gives that synopsis of where Ocracoke is with provisions in regard to the FEMA flood maps, I would like to recommend that we have our final public hearing and adopt the actual flood damage prevention ordinance on June 1st, after we talk to Tom a little bit about why he believes we have a little more work to do.
Sure. The recommendation from the planning board following a very lengthy discussion about this, so just a little bit of background. You all may be aware that the new FEMA flood maps are getting ready to go into effect. And one of the concerns is that those FEMA flood maps, in some cases around the island and in a good number of locations, actually reduce the FEMA base flood elevation. And everybody on the island is looking at that, kind of scratching our heads going, why in the world would they be reducing the base flood elevation, considering what just happened with Hurricane Dorian? And the only answer that we have from FEMA people on that is that the decision to do that and the creation of these new maps took place well prior to Hurricane Dorian, and it was based on data that was collected, maybe even, I don't know, maybe not even including Hurricane Florence. But even considering that, if you went all the way back as far as Matthew, which was 3 years ago, you'd certainly be seeing that there's been a trend of increasing flood on the island. And so we're all a little bit mystified, despite the explanations, as to why FEMA would be reducing the base flood elevation. But in doing some research and talking with some of the folks in Raleigh who are privy to the how all this process works, it actually turns out that it's a benefit to us as long as we take some additional steps. So by FEMA reducing the base flood elevation in various places on the island, it's not everywhere, but it's a good number of places. The result of that for those areas will be that flood insurance is more affordable, because there are some houses that are currently not in compliance with the base flood elevation, which at present is 6 feet above sea level all over the island. And there are houses that are currently sit below that 6-foot elevation that for whom flood insurance is extremely costly. In those places where FEMA is going to reduce the base flood elevation and some of those homes will come into compliance, their insurance costs will go down considerably. But to address the problem of, is that really a logical thing to do, considering what happened to Ocracoke and Hurricane Dorian, which, just to give you a picture of what that flooding did, it came in pretty consistently across the island at 7 feet above sea level. So with the FEMA base flood at 6 feet and the Hyde County current the technical term is getting by me. The county adds a foot to a freeboard. Sorry, with the Hyde County freeboard added to the FEMA base flood of 6 feet, we currently have a 7-foot elevation, and that's the height that the water came in at. A lot of houses, including my own, I had elevated to 7 feet, and then I gave it an extra couple of inches just to be sure. And if it were not for those couple of inches, my house would have been flooded. So the general feeling across the island and the feeling among the planning board and those people who attended the meeting, it was a very well attended meeting. The general feeling was that it just didn't make sense to decrease the flood elevation requirements. And so the planning board, after much discussion, recommended that despite what the FEMA base flood elevation is, the county should add a freeboard amount that would put a standard of 9 feet above sea level for all construction on the island. So where FEMA is currently lowering that, the Hyde County freeboard would increase it to 9 feet from what's currently, our current regulation is effectively 7 feet. We talked about higher possible elevations and less than that, more than that, and there was a general consensus finally at 9 feet. And that was the recommendation of the planning board. So that's where we are right now in terms of the planning board and our thinking on it. However, since that time, several people have brought to my attention the issue of commercial buildings and the effect that 9-foot height may have on commercial buildings that are going to be elevated or new construction commercial buildings. And in particular, the issue is the handicap ramp requirements, the ADA requirements. So ADA requires, as Shannon, I'm sure you know, is 12 inches of run for every inch of rise. So that additional 2 feet would require an additional 24 lineal feet of ramp, including you have to add for every 12 feet of ramp, you have to have a level space that's roughly 5 foot by 5 foot. So it's a significant additional cost, but also in some cases on the island, the lack of space to put that ramp may preclude a business from considering elevating their building. So there's that issue, which I think is significant and worth thinking about. And then the other one, again, relative to business commercial structures, is people on foot walking around the village. I can just picture people getting to the bottom of that set of stairs and looking up and going, you know what, I'm not going up that many stairs. And there are a lot of people who just plain can't do it. And it may discourage business. And so what was suggested by a number of people on further consideration is that we look and see if we can make a different standard for commercial structures than for residential structures. And Chris, you had that conversation, and maybe I'll turn it back to you to address that.
Yes, sir. And my initial response from floodplain management, North Carolina floodplain management, was that under our floodplain ordinance, we would not be able to allow to differentiate between residential and commercial structures. But what we have done preliminary, Tom, and I haven't reached out to you yet, those we've asked for a work group meeting with our floodplain manager office folks in North Carolina, in Raleigh, for tomorrow afternoon. There are some other options where that they, off the top of their heads, don't think differentiation between commercial and residential is an option that we would be able to take. There are some other options, including flood proofing and other creative mechanisms to keep those structures in compliance. And so that is another reason why I wanted to give us some additional time so that myself and Commissioner Paul, Ms. Jane Hodges could have that work group session with our representatives at North Carolina Floodplain Management to come up with some options to help us work through this, because I see that it could be very much a hardship to our businesses, and at the same time we do want to set that standard up high enough that, you know, we're out of harm's way when the next big flood comes through, and it's not something to take lightly moving forward. And so hopefully before we reconvene on June 1st, Tom, we'll be able to work with North Carolina Floodplain to talk about those specific needs for Ocracoke. And I encourage our mainland board members to look at the standards that are set for the mainland for floodplain. And Ms. Jane is here, and I'm sure she'd be happy to speak to any questions that you have about the mainland portion of the floodplain ordinance. We can differentiate this by geographic area. So we can set a different set of standards for the mainland versus the island. But in our initial conversations, we cannot differentiate between commercial and residential use. But we are going to look at some creative options this week.
But the 1 foot of base flood that we, or
Freeboard.
the freeboard, that's set by the county.
Yeah, yes, sir. So the flood maps they're giving us they're significantly lower in most areas than they were, and so the county can impose additional freeboard onto those base flood maps in an effort to keep those structures that we know may be a little bit too low at a place where we keep them out of harm's way. So Tom knows that the majority of the houses on the island, they were flooded at around 7'2", sir. 7'2".
7 feet.
7 feet, little bit
Yep.
maybe plus, and that and with the flood maps going out or below that, the recommendation from Ocracoke was to go to 9 from the planning board. And we felt really good about that decision until we started talking to some other people that would be so negatively affected, because 1 inch for each foot of rise, or that ratio is that 2 foot means 24 extra foot of ramp. That's correct. Significant when you think about that ratio. 24 extra foot of ramp, and on those small lots that we typically have there could really limit businesses in that addition. So, but on the mainland, are you guys Do you have any questions about the flood ordinance for the mainland, what's proposed?
I don't right now, but Jane, do you have anything that you want to add?
Miss Jane, you can come take my seat so everybody can hear you. Because Tom can't hear you if you don't talk in the mic.
We are already differentiating in our ordinance between the mainland and Okeechobee. Had we not done that, then Okeechobee would have a 7.5 proposed, which is a half foot over. You can give anybody countywide a variance, and they do not have to elevate anything. If they flood-proof it, that is just as good. There's some things they have to have from a engineer saying that it's flood-proof, and they use flood-proof materials. So it doesn't have to be 9 foot in the air or 7.5 foot in the air like it's proposed for on this side. But if you do that and you don't use it judiciously, then our community rating rate will suffer. And they will start looking at each and every elevation that the county has. And they will start to question. And we may lose our rating. But that's an option. You've got flood proofing, and then you have got giving them a variance. Those are the two things under state law that y'all can do. Right now, it's proposed 7.5 feet for the mainland overall. 3 feet if you're in an X zone. Normally, it would be 2 feet, but giving us a little extra on that so that people can get under houses and do what they need to do for their plumbing, their electrical, and their insulation.
So the 7.5 feet would put us back where we are on the mainland right
It
now,
will give us an extra half foot,
extra half foot.
which according to the community rating system is as good as 8 feet.
Because the maps now are dropping from 7 to 5 in most places, or 6 to 5.
Yes. And some are going to 4 feet, 3 feet, and 0 feet.
Gotcha.
And the same thing on Okeechobee, it's going from 0 to 6 at all different levels.
When you say that our rating would change, but if we were 1 foot above, just wherever you're located, if it's the choice of the landowner, I mean, would that, I guess with the elevation maps, if it's typically been 1 foot above,
Yeah,
if it's 3 foot, what's wrong with them building to 4? I know we want a good rating, but are you saying that we're gonna have to do that, or everything's gotta be 7.5 feet?
no, we can change it, we can keep it at 7.
Right.
Right now, it's 7, right now it is 1 foot of freeboard above the base flood, whether that's at 3 foot, 4 foot, or 6 foot. We can keep that, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But some places would have to be 7 feet to be above the base
Right.
flood, and some people,
Right.
some places could be built on the ground to
Right.
be a base flood.
My house, 8 foot. We've never had water. But that's what it had to be.
There's a system we're looking at about 2.5 feet freeboard, added to whatever the base elevation is roughly throughout the county. Right.
2 to 3 feet.
Gotcha.
And I'm probably getting ready to get in trouble for what I'm about to say, but even on Ocracoke or wherever, if somebody chooses, if they're in that position and they've got a freeboard, if we set a freeboard level and their insurance goes up or down or whatever, if it's their choice, I mean, I understand we wanting to protect everybody from everything, but also, if cost is a limiting factor, somebody may choose to take that risk. And again, I'd like to say, I don't know. I know on the mainland, I'd feel better as far as if somewhere something 0, give them a foot of freeboard. You know, personally, I don't like having everybody just have to be to a certain level, you know.
And also, anybody that files for a building permit prior to when you adopt this ordinance does not have to meet the new ordinance. They will be grandfathered in if it's on Overcoat at the 7 foot, and then over here at the 1 foot above base flood.
Basically, the 1 foot above base flood today will be the same thing as this 1.5 feet with the new ordinance. So we basically got the same, on the main line will be the same as it is right now.
So if anybody that wants to build anything gets me a building permit prior to when y'all do this, it will be under the old flood ordinance. And I just did one today that is a business on Overcoat that will be put in at the 7 foot.
But that's
I know
not
that-
saying they can't build above the 7
They can
foot.
go above it. They just can't go below
I know everybody in this county knows of houses that have had to be elevated that make absolutely no sense in the situation. And so, anyway, I think that, again, I don't want every commissioner meeting, we have to do a special ordinance for somebody, but also let people make their own decision on the elevation is, and I know that the FEMA elevations have to stay, but
it. We've only done one in the 14 years I've been in the office.
Is it still mandatory that you do an elevation shot pretty much before you hit the phone?
Yes.
Then they wouldn't know.
Then your surveyor, who is also your engineer, hopefully, will do a floodproofing certificate. And that will have the steps you have to abide by in it to construct.
Based on the elevation that you receive, get back.
If you decide not to go to full height.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Jane?
I'd just like to comment regarding Ben's concerns. I understand that, but there are a few reasons why it's a good idea to have a base flood elevation plus freeboard that really provides safety. And if you had been over here during Hurricane Dorian and you saw how many houses got flooded, and the damage that it did and the cost to the community and the cost to the individuals, if there's some way in the future that we can prevent that by agreeing as a community that we want to set a standard, it's not so much imposing the will of the government on people as it is setting a standard that's to everybody's benefit. When people build, they often rely on engineers to establish things like finished floor height. They're more interested in, they want to know how the kitchen is laid out or what color the cabinets are going to be. They aren't going to have the set of information that they would really need to debate the elevation. They're going to rely on their engineer to do that. And their engineer is going to simply look at the base flood elevation plus freeboard. Engineer is not going to look at it and say, yeah, I think you should do something different than what the code requires. So I think it's important that we set that level at a height that actually provides safety so that years down the road, people can sit in their houses and watch that flood water flow underneath their house instead of lift their house right off its foundation. We've had over 30 houses bulldozed on this island since September 6th. And
Are most of those, Tom, were they above the current recommendation of 7 foot that had to be bulldozed, or were most of them?
No, most of them were below and were built prior to the establishment of the 7 foot elevation. But my house, for example, and other houses that I know of that were built at 7 foot, my house is an older house, but I elevated it. And when I elevated it, I looked to see what the code asked for. And that's what I put it at. and that water came within 2 inches of coming into my house. And do you want to bet that the next major hurricane is going to come in lower than that? I don't want to. So I think that we're setting a community standard for a reason, as opposed to just simply imposing the will of the government on people.
That was a pretty powerful statistic Ms. Jane just said, Tom, in case you did not hear. There were how
I didn't
many?
hear.
47 have been demoed.
47 homes on the island have been demoed, which is pretty powerful.
My point, Tom, isn't to complain or whatever, but it is to say that, man, 7 foot was pretty daggum good, you know? That what we did to mitigate damage for a long time, yeah. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be 9, but I would also sit here and argue, if I was getting ready to build a house in Ocracoke, well, why not 7.5? And I've dug the carpet out of my wife's grandparents' house twice, so I know what you're talking about flooding. Been there, done it. I just also know that I know that over here on the mainland, there are also people that have had to build houses that are ridiculous because of this regulation, and that they can drive cars under, but there ain't been no flood water there since 1954. So, you know, it's just, anyway, so it's kind of a broad paintbrush, and we'll figure it out.
So my recommendation to the board would be, if possible, and I'll take any advice from the attorney and Ms. Lois in the structure of it, but should we recess this public hearing to June 1st and then adopt the maps, or do we adjourn and re-advertise this public hearing until June 1st?
I think you can recess.
Yes, we would like to do that, gentlemen, if somebody would afford us that motion to recess this public hearing until June 1st. And when we come back on June 1st, we'll be prepared to adopt this ordinance as June 19th is our scheduled deadline from the NFIP program.
All right, any more questions or?
If y'all have any questions, you want to see something change, please let me know, and I'll have it brand new for y'all.
I have one question. Shannon, from a mainland standpoint, you build a lot of houses. Do you have any thoughts about what that recommendation could be? With 1 foot above base flood be adequate in most situations a year? Or do you think adopting something across the board in the whole county is necessary?
Up until now, I think our flood maps have served us, but as they are coming out with new maps that may lower that standard a foot or two, we would have lost houses that have been built. If they were built to a new standard, we probably would have lost them at 1 foot freeboard with the new maps that are coming out, with the increased flooding that we've seen, especially in my township.
Right.
So if we can maintain what was here now and add basically 6 inches to what we've got now, we're not really adding much on the mainland. We're adding 6 inches on the mainland. But if we can step that to the base floods throughout the townships or as the maps, I think that's a pretty fair application across the mainland. We're not all at 7 right now. Some of us may be at 6 and 5, and it gets a little better in places around the lake. And I know Englehart has some X zones and Grassy Ridge and places like that. And where I'm building is X zones. But it'll be stepped.
Is there a way for us to use the old map on the mainland instead of to establish those elevations?
Yeah.
Instead of adopting a new one, keep our old map, establish the code based a half foot higher on those old maps, if that's.
We have to adopt the new maps. Okay. We can adopt a local ordinance that sets it to a standard, whatever standard we want, above the flood map. So we have to adopt the new maps as they stand by June 19th. And we can't adopt anything as a local ordinance above and beyond that standard, but not below it, correct?
If you want to keep just 1 foot of freeboard, then it will be like 3 foot or 1 foot, 1 foot, 4 foot, 6 foot, and 7 foot, depending on where your lot is and what zone you're in. We can do that, yes.
But if we go with the new map with 1 foot of freeboard, that puts us lower than where we are today,
Yes,
6 inches lower,
could be as much,
or a foot lower.
yeah. But you're gonna go from 0 to 7 feet.
Okay. Any other questions? If not,
Just that,
go ahead.
it may be worth it if, Chris or Jane, if you can tell folks how they can see that map online if they want to see the flood map.
You go to what's called the FRIS website, Flood Information System, I think is what it is.
It's FRIS, FRIS, and Donnie Shoemate.
Already on the building inspection.
And Donnie Shoemate has added
Okay.
that to the building inspections page along with this draft ordinance.
And what you want to
Perfect.
click on is not the effective, the preliminary. That is the new.
Yes, sir. So once you go to the building inspections page, you can go into that FRIS website. And for anybody listening at home, if you check on what's effective, that are what we've been calling the old maps. But if you go into preliminary, that are the proposed new maps that will be adopted June the 19th. And then on that same page, www.hydecountync.gov, you can also access this draft flood ordinance. It's also on that page. So you can look at the language within the flood ordinance and your map on your property on those flood maps on the FRIS website.
And if you click the different tabs, it will show you what percentage of annual flood is for your property. And an approximation of the value that you will lose should you get flooded.
I added a link to it in there, Facebook.
Thank you, Don.
Any other questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion to recess this public hearing until June the 1st?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Swindell and a second by Commissioner Simmons to recess this meeting until June the 1st. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are in, this public hearing is in recess, and now we will go back to our regular meeting. And we have our tax collections report for April.
Yes, sir, we do have our tax collections report for April, in addition to some additional information for the Board of Equalization and Review presented by Mr. Justin Gibbs, and he's on the phone, so I'm just going to hand it over to you, Justin.
Thanks, Chris. Before you is the daily distribution report from the Hyde County Tax Office from the month of April. I'd like to apologize to Commissioner Paul. I think this was handed out during the Board of E&R, so you don't have the benefit of having it in front of you. But the tax collections in the month of April were $89,053.55. This is when compared to 2019, which that report was also provided. That total is 49.7% of what was collected last year during the month of April. In discussing the decrease with Linda, she believes that it's related to higher collections earlier in the year, and as I reported last month, with Dorian and COVID-19, the social distancing, as well as the economic distress that's being felt across our county, that may have also contributed to decreasing collections in the month of April. So we recommend that the board accept the report.
Justin, on this report, where is the $89,000? I think it was $89,000 you said. Where is that?
If you look under on the very first page, you'll see the breakdown of the years. it'll be 2019, and then if you look down to Hyde County tax, and that's actually the county taxes that were collected. So on the far right-hand side, that gives you the total with the penalties that were assessed for late payment, which brings it to a total of $89,053.55.
I don't see that number.
It'll be just below the Fairfield Drainage District taxes. The very first line, it says Hyde County tax.
I see. I was looking under highlighted numbers. I'm sorry. I got it.
Okay. Yeah, I think the highlighted numbers were from last year.
Thank you, Justin.
Yes, sir. No problem. And as Chris alluded, we have some additional information. Of course, you all know the Board of E&R met tonight or this afternoon at 5 o'clock. During that meeting, the board took action to extend the period in which tax appeals would be heard. And that extension would go to June 1st. So we're adding one additional meeting to the schedule for hearings. The reasoning behind that is, the damages that Ocracoke experienced during Hurricane Dorian. We want to be as inclusive as possible, so people can file appeals, and also it'll give us an opportunity to do additional public education for our citizenry, so they understand the appeal process and what the Board of E&R does. Just to give some background, North Carolina General Statute 105-286 requires that real estate be assessed at 100% of market value as determined by a tax reevaluation. Hyde County's tax reevaluation was January 1st of 2017. And if someone is interested in appealing their tax assessment, the reasons for doing that are the property is not appraised at the true market value as of January the 1st, our last 2017, our last reevaluation. The property characteristics used to calculate the assessment are incorrect, and anybody that wants to view that information can go to our Hyde County property record search, and that URL is lrcp.ncptscloud.com/Hyde. And also the property is not equally appraised as compared to other similar properties. So with the extension that the board approved tonight, that'll give people an extended period of time to appeal. Understanding with the social distancing requirements and everything that it may be difficult for individuals to stop in and schedule a hearing. We're working with Donnie Shoemate, our IT director, to create an online portal where people can go to register and also view information on the appeals process. But we've also created an email address for people to request or submit their appeals, and that email address is tax-appeals@HydeCountyNC.gov, or they can call the Hyde County Tax Office at 252-926-4469. So hopefully in the next few days, there'll be some additional information to go out for people so they'll better understand the process, and, we can be as inclusive as possible to ensure that people's tax values for 2020 are reflective of the state of the property as it existed on January 1, 2020. Are there any questions? Okay. Hopefully we'll be getting that information out very shortly, and maybe we'll we'll get some appeals, and the tax administrator will have the ability to work with those individuals to try to resolve those issues. Thank you.
I think that we're
Justin?
on, I think that, I'm sorry, Mr. Tom, I think that we're in line to have that release and that webpage up tomorrow, Donnie. So that FAQ, the frequently asked questions sheet, will be out tomorrow through all of our media channels. I spoke with Commissioner Paul about getting some paper copies out to the post office and the potentially the variety store for distribution, and Donnie will get that webpage up tomorrow. Go ahead, Commissioner Paul.
Yeah, I wondered if Justin would just describe what's been done up to this point to help people whose homes were damaged. My understanding is that anyone who has a building permit may have already been contacted by the tax department, and discussions are underway for a reassessment or an adjustment to the assessment to reflect those damages. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Every year, the county, the tax office, does new construction and pickups, and during that process, we obtained building permit information from the inspections office that was provided to the appraisers. They visited all of the locations where permits had been filed and worked with those individuals to adjust their tax assessment. All of those changes have occurred. All of that information has been input, and those tax assessments have been revised based on the damages. But as we all know, not everybody got a building permit, and we want to make sure that their damages are captured as well. And this is the opportunity for them to do that. And I will say, even if people don't get their appeals in time to be heard by June the 1st, the Board of Equalization and Review's work can continue. The only thing that expires is their ability to make changes. So they can make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners to have those changes implemented. So there will still be opportunities for people even after this extension, but we definitely want to try to capture those damages as expeditiously as possible, and have the opportunity to work with those individuals before they're billed.
So anyone listening, or anyone who knows someone whose house was damaged or demolished, should just check and make sure if they're certain that their appraisal has been adjusted. That's good. If they aren't sure, they should check in with the tax office.
Yes, sir. That's correct. That's correct. And they can either do that by emailing or calling. As I stated earlier, we have set up a special email address for appeals, and that email address is tax-appeals@hydecounty.nc.gov, or they can call the office. Alternatively, which probably wouldn't be the most expeditious way, they can mail their appeals to the Hyde County Tax Office, Attention Tax Appeals, and that's the P.O. Box 279, Swan Quarter, North Carolina 27885.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions for Justin? If not, do I hear a motion to accept the tax collection report for April? Have a motion by Commissioner Simmons. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Swindell. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
The next item on your, The next item on your agenda is a presentation from Ms. Luana Gibbs, the Hyde County Health Director, who is going to present a COVID-19 update tonight. Ms. Luana?
Good evening, everybody. So the update on COVID-19 locally is that we have one active case. The individual has not recovered, and we have 0 deaths. From a regional standpoint, COVID-like illnesses under surveillance has increased. Regionally, we have 930 laboratory confirmed cases. That does not mean that they're all active because some have recovered. And regionally, we've had 35 deaths. From a statewide perspective, laboratory confirmed cases have not changed. The trajectory should be a decrease over 14 days, so we're stable there. Positive tests have not changed either, and that's another trajectory that should be decreasing. These are positive tests as a percentage of total tests. Hospitalizations have gone up, and that should be a trajectory decrease as well over 14 days. The General Assembly came together and approved, and Governor Cooper signed today the coronavirus relief bill, which will be $1.57 billion federal dollars that will help businesses and local government in the relief efforts for COVID-19. Mandy Cohen, Secretary for Public Health, reinforced the 3 core prevention strategies that we all should follow, which is social distancing of 6 feet or greater apart, wearing facial coverings when we're in the public conducting essential businesses, and washing our hands. As you know, back in April, the governor suggested 3 phases for opening up the state. The stay-at-home order from the governor should expire on May the 8th, but it actually will remain in effect during phase 1. It will just be modified, and he will give us an update tomorrow or Wednesday on how this is going to progress. But in phase 1, people will be able to travel to businesses like retail businesses. Stores can open, certain stores, as long as they implement social distancing and they have proper cleaning protocols in place. People still should be in gatherings of less than 10. Parks will be reopened. Facial coverings will remain a recommendation. People should still work from home, and congregate living should continue their rigorous efforts to protect their individuals. That should last from 2 to 3 weeks, which means we would be at the end of May, the first part of June, if things go as they predict and as they hope, and that's when we would go into phase 2. At that point, they would lift the stay-at-home order except for vulnerable populations. They would allow limited opening of restaurants and bars, which means, likely a decreased number of people in those facilities and socially distancing within. They'll allow church services with a reduced capacity. They'll increase the numbers of people in social gatherings, open public playgrounds, and for the congregate living facilities, they will still continue with their rigorous efforts. At the end of that, which should take 4 to 6 weeks, we're now heading into July. If things go as planned, restrictions will be lessened further for even the vulnerable populations at that point, and they'll increase the capacity of restaurants and bars and increase the number of people in social gatherings. And the poor congregate living population will have to continue their rigorous efforts because they are it's such a high risk group of people. I know you all have probably heard all of that and you've heard it countless times, but I just felt like it was important to reinforce the timeline of what the governor is predicting. I also want to say that, as the health director, it is my responsibility to give to you all the things that are important for the safety of public health. And I know you all have other things to think about besides that, and I respect you for that. I just want to give you the best information that I can related to protecting our public. So that is the end of my presentation.
Does anybody have any questions for Luana? I couldn't understand that. Well, I reckon after we got that report, I think now is the time that maybe that we need to consider a timeline for start with or opening the mainland to visitors. I think that's the discussion that we need to have. So is any discussion from this group, from the commissioners?
Hyde County mainland is currently restricted to visitors. I think Mr. Earl is encouraging a conversation about when and if we would reopen the mainland to visitors, and any suggested recommendations from the board about that visitor restriction moving forward. So we'll open up the floor.
Well, this is people have very strong feelings from both sides of this deal. In the beginning, I had a whole lot of people that wanted a whole lot of restrictions. That was the main cause I got. But I can say in the last few days, I actually had a voicemail today of a lady begging to be able to go back to work and to be able to reopen businesses. I've had several calls this week. Just wanting to be able to make a living, and they pretty well said it don't make no sense that these essential people can come, people can go to Greenville, they can go to Raleigh from Hyde County, bring it back. Don't understand why they can't make a choice to open their businesses. And so I think I know I had one woman tell me this week that she said I may even die of it, but I would say she's in her 60s, and she said, but I'd rather die of it as live in a bubble the rest of my life. And anyway, I know we definitely need to keep in mind to be clean and to take precautionary efforts, but I don't know what right we have to tell people if they want to work that they can't, and to have restrictions that prevent them from having customers. But I think I had another discussion today, and I'm sure I'll get some ugly letters or some ugly emails behind this, but I've thought about it a lot. When I first started logging, I had a group of people that put a gate up and wouldn't allow me to haul my logs, and I had to go the other way. And when you're a young man, you're trying to get started, and people that already have their self-established prevent you from doing something, it's pretty hurtful. And I feel like right now we put a gate up, and we're stopping people that want to make a living. They want to make a living, and the county is saying, no, you can't. You can't make a living. And these are people that are trying to be law-abiding citizens. And when you have a gate that blocks your access to keep your livelihood, it's pretty hurtful. And so, especially if you're not getting a state worker or getting some kind of check or whatever, and you're having to make a living by owning your motel or carrying hunters or carrying fishermen or people fishing. I mean, that's kind of what we are here. I kind of go what I said last meeting, the only way to stop it from coming here is to not let nobody go nowhere, can't go and come. And I talked with a person from Hyde Medicine today before this meeting, and they said that we have flattened the curve. And I'll say the same thing he told me today, the same thing that I said last meeting. The goal here is not to stop this virus. The goal is we're going to get the virus. And their hope in the medical field is that 60% of the population will get it. And that I want to say he called it herd
Immunity.
Excuse me?
Herd immunity.
Herd immunity. And he said they're hoping for herd immunity that will defeat this thing. It's not to stop it, guys. We're going to get it, and it's coming. And they said, I can't remember, but for every positive case, their internal numbers say there's at least 10 times that many. So if you have 1 million, there's at least 10 million with it. And so I don't know. I say I care about people's health. I've got emails, texts that I want everybody above 65 to die. That is the farthest thing from the truth. In no way do I want anybody to die. But I would almost beg to say that some of these people that are going to have to file bankruptcy and people that have good jobs that are losing them, that aren't going to be able to feed their family, there's going to be lives lost on that side of the fence too. And we're still going to have the coronavirus when it's all said and done. So, I don't know. It's a trying time, but I'm going to tell you what, when I have to open the gate every time I come in and out of my county, that's kind of tough. I am sure glad that our surrounding counties that we need to go get our supplies from are allowing us to come and go.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
So,
I was going to say, I will mirror what Ben said. I have parents at risk age. We all know someone at that at-risk age, and they have made adaptations in their life and in their livelihoods that we can keep them safe as much as possible. My father's almost 73 years old, and he says, we can't continue like we're doing. It'll be a ruination of this county, of this state, of this country if we keep going like we are. I was in Washington this morning getting supplies, and I took a picture of the Lowe's parking lot. There are probably more cars in that parking lot than there are at every business in Hyde County on a good day. Same thing at Walmart, at the food lines. And if they are allowed to continue business as corporations, why are we bankrupting our small locally owned businesses left and right? Because there's aid promised, but it's not going to come through in time, or it's not going to be enough to replace that business. So, like I said, we protect our at-risk population, our nursing homes, our assisted care facilities, our hospitals, but we have got to start a plan to get back into business.
Mr. Toppin, you got any comment?
Yeah, I do have something to say. I would like to know what business in Hyde County that has really been affected in Hyde County mainland, that has really been affected. Can anybody answer that question for me?
Pages of them, here and on Ocracoke.
Here, mainland.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell me any business that's
Any restaurant,
not, they're doing
business.
I told one of the restaurant owners,
keeping the lights on.
they're
keeping the lights on. All the wait staff's been laid off.
That's not what he told me. That's not
All
what
I
he
can
said.
tell you is I was called this week by an individual that owns a business, and they quit taking customers before they were required to. And they said, please give us direction. Yeah, you can throw your hands up if you're not having to make it, whatever. If you don't depend on having a customer, yeah, you can say whatever, but you're trying to keep your damn lights on. You want those customers, and we're restricting them. They said, we quit taking customers prior to being mandated by this county.
Okay.
And they want to open back. And I'm not going to call their name because they didn't ask me to. I didn't ask them if I could. But I do know for a fact there's people not having business here on this county, in this mainland, that want it, that want it.
I'm not gonna sit here and say that it doesn't affect a motel, a restaurant. Well, we got 2 motels, 3, 3 restaurants. All the state workers are pretty much working. The nursing homes are pretty much working. Everybody that has a job that wanna work can pretty much go to work. Now, getting back to the population, we probably have 75% of our population here on the mainland, 60 and below, or 60 and above, I'm sorry, 60 and above. You're talking about 1,000 people having the virus, and you can look for 10,000. Well, I don't want anybody to have to be buried because of this virus. I know it's not left up to me. We have a higher power. And that's who I lean on, the higher power, along with good common judgment. To try to look out for the people that want us to do the job and do it right. And I know that we're not going to get it 100% all the time. Impossible. But when we make a decision, we got to make it on that 70% of people of our population that one of them could have it, and I don't want that on me.
Well, you have it.
I got the
It's
responsibility, but I don't want to take that responsibility and abuse it so that, oh yeah, we can open up and go into business. There's nothing here to open up to.
You're right, because we keep snuffing it. Because those people aren't state workers and because they got their own private business, they don't matter. The handful of people that are left have private businesses, they don't matter, right? Ain't that what you said a minute ago? I'm pretty sure that's what you said, the people that have the motels. Don't worry about them.
3.
You know, yeah. Oh, but they ain't but 3. Forget about them. Let's not worry about those 3. That's what you said.
That's not what I'm saying.
What I'm trying to say, the things here, I'm waiting for your motion to shut the county down and put everybody in their house and let's swab everybody's nose in this county and find out who's got it. Because it's here. And I'm going to tell you, it's a damn joke that we're sitting here. We have to have common sense. But I am so sick of people not caring about private industry. It's sick. It's easy when you get you a check or you got a state job or whatever, and you're going to get your check no matter what. But you people from, I had a wonderful voicemail from Ocracoke this morning begging to open tonight. I let Commissioner Pugh listen to it. Begging. They want to go to work. They said, please, we're starving. We need work. Yeah, you're right. It may not be a whole lot. But the ones that want it, there ain't no need. You know, when I was logging down that road, you know how many people were logging down that road? Just me. Just me. And it meant a lot to me. I had 23 employees. I might not have mattered. It might not have mattered. It might have just shut my logging off. But the 23 families I fed, daggone, it mattered to them too. It's easy to say it when you're getting your check, and it's easy to say it when you got one coming in. But for all the people, and yeah, I'm gonna get some ugly letters. I can't wait to read them. They're gonna talk about me and my family and all sorts of stuff. But I want to have them. Send them to me, because if I stand right here and I'm able to help these people get reopened, I want them to reopen. I want there to be proper precautions. I want people to wash their hands. I want them to do right. But until you stop everybody from leaving this county and going to Greenville, going to Raleigh, going to Washington, it's coming back. It's already here. It's already here. The only way to stop it is to go home and stay in your house. Don't go out. And the other thing, we can't allow our residents to leave here at all. Nobody can come, nobody can go. We just all stay put and do nothing. And when you're sick and you have a heart attack, nope, you stay right here. Right? I don't know. You gotta say everybody wants to play the game. It's there.
Gentlemen, as your manager, let me offer just a little perspective. I think that when we put this visitor restriction in place, the COVID virus was very, very new to us. I don't think that this board put the COVID, or any other municipalities, put the COVID restrictions in place to completely keep the virus from coming into our communities, because I think we're well aware that that's not possible. But I think those restrictions were put into place to give us enough time to make sure we had adequate precautions in effect. And over this period of time, we've had our restrictions in place. We have worked with our healthcare providers, including EMS, our health center, our health departments, to look at testing and to look at medical facilities, to look at how we clean our ambulances and get those protocols in place, to educate our citizens on what kind of precautions they needed to use, to prepare the general public, to prepare our businesses, to let them know how they needed to, what kind of precautions they need in place, to prepare our ferry system, our emergency responders, our county staff, because we had to get our hands wrapped around this thing, because no matter what, we won't keep it out. And I think we've had that adequate time to prepare, and I'd like to present a proposal to this board for discussion to lift the Hyde County mainland visitor restrictions starting Wednesday, May 13th at 5 a.m.
Chris and I had that discussion today, and we are prepared. I mean, we might get overrun and might have to change, but I think we need to move forward with something positive. And I've got a lot of calls from people. I've had some right after we put it on, you know, that the parents lived here. The mother called me, got children, lives in another county that didn't join Hyde County, that couldn't even come home for their birthday. And they're from here, grew up here, and you know, things like that needs to cease. And I know the restaurants are still open, but most of the waiting staff are no longer working because they're doing it takeout, and they don't need all the waiting staff. And I know we've got some campgrounds that are people that don't own the property that they can't come, and so I agree with Chris on this. I just like to hear maybe some more discussion on her proposal, or the proposal that she put forward that we discussed
So
this week.
if one of you board members would consider that as a motion, I did make a proposal to the board to lift our mainland visitor restriction as of Wednesday, May 13th at 5 a.m.
Which we've already lifted we've never had a restriction on non-resident homeowners on the mainland.
Yes, sir.
So this is just for visitors, and there's not going to be, in my opinion, not that many visitors coming because we don't have that much to draw that many visitors. Anyway, we have a proposal. Do I hear a motion to approve this proposal of lifting the restriction on Wednesday morning at 5 a.m.?
The 13th or this week?
This week.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
you
I
said
looked at my
13th.
calendar wrong, sir. I do apologize.
6th.
Yes, sir.
So
yes.
moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Swindell and a second by Commissioner Simmons. Now, do we have any further discussion?
I think it's very important that everybody follow the protocols that are keep everything clean. And if you're sick, you stay home. And if you feel like you're at risk, you probably should stay home. And
And I think the reason that we chose the Wednesday, it gives the health department time to get information out to the businesses, make sure they have the information, have it posted, to wash your hands, keep your distance, and wear a mask if you so desire. So that gives the health department time to get these businesses, what businesses we have in the county. That don't mean the restaurants are going to open. They're still going to be doing takeout because that's a state regulation. So we're still under the regulations from the state. We're just letting visitors, and we're having visitors to come in anyway. So, but that just takes that restriction off and frees up the sheriff's department on the mainland. So,
can I ask Ms. Luana a question?
Sure.
Ms. Luana, are you still with us?
I'm here.
I was just curious,
Yes, sir.
am I correct, and I want to know what the health department's saying? Is this virus supposed to go through our population? Is that correct? And the goal was to flatten the curve so our hospitals were not overrun. Is that correct?
It is correct that we are to flatten the curve and we did not want to overrun healthcare workers. It also was about saving lives too. And let me reinforce, I'm afraid that what I said a while ago maybe started something, I don't know, but the bottom line is it is here. You're exactly right. But what we've got to do is the prevention strategies, which is what we have been saying all the time, which consists of the 6 feet distance, the facial coverings, the washing your hands, the staying clean. I mean, whether the visitors come in or they don't come in, I mean, it's all about doing everything that you can to keep from spreading the virus. And yes, it was initially to prevent taxing the healthcare system and also to save lives because it's kind of sad and you know, you don't want that on your head knowing that, you know, people have died.
But I want to.
But if you do those measures,
Right, if you do those measures, and I want to say it, but I want to ask the question again. Is the virus supposed to go through our population? Are we going to cure it where nobody's going to get it, or is it supposed to be going through the population?
so they're working on a vaccine to prevent those who do not have it from getting it, but that's not happened yet. They're doing research for medications that they can treat it so people don't, you know, that have it hopefully will survive. And what you were talking earlier about herd community, the herd, oh my God, the word has left me. Anyway,
Immunity.
yes, I'm sorry about that. But yes, that's where enough people get vaccinated or immune to something that it protects everyone. And naturally that would be a good thing, if that happens. But yeah, we're gonna wind up with it. I mean, you just know that that's just how that's going to be.
And I'm not sure about this, but I think that currently our Beaufort County Hospital has 10 ventilators. Is that correct?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. And I'm thinking that currently there's one individual on the ventilators. There's one individual there, I think, on ventilator. I think, I may be wrong. And, but anyway, I'm just saying that the goal is to flatten the curve, and I don't know how we can sit here forever and wait forever for everything. You know, I don't know. And especially since what I've been told, and I think you just reaffirmed it, is that everybody's looking to get it, and it's here. And a lot of people have it, and a lot of more people are going to get it.
Well, I must say that the nursing home is one of the major things that we need to protect. And so far, they've done a tremendous job because that's sort of much been locked down for the last, 5-6 weeks. And the only people that go are employees. And so that's, you know, if it ever get in a nursing home, that would be terrible. But I think they've done a tremendous job of taking care of their patients. And to me, it's all about doing what is right for yourself. I mean, you've got to protect yourself. That's what it's all about. Everybody has to take that responsibility.
Well, I think for the most part, Mr. Chairman, that I kind of done outstanding well. As far as trying to keep it out, I think everybody's on this, you know, because they know we don't need it. And everybody that I talk with, I'll call me, of course, just like they call y'all. They want to practice safe distancing and staying at home. They don't mind doing this as long as they're doing it knowing that they're going to survive it. And I think as long as we continue to do what we're doing, I think we'll be okay. Well, it's getting the virus, you know.
We're the only county in the state, I think, other than your beach areas like there, Currituck and Ocracoke, as far as not a tourist attraction that has any visitor restrictions. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir. We are one of the most restricted counties in the state for a mainland community right now.
And we have one of the least populations.
We do. And I think that we all wanted to make, I think I'll reiterate what we said. We knew so little about this that we basically did the shutdown in order to make sure that we were ready to respond. And I think now, has come a time and that we do lift the visitor restriction. The mainland and the island are very different, and that's why we deal with these in completely different dialogues. We never put a non-resident property owner restriction on the mainland. Our density is much different here. And at this point, I think we are, I think the board has a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second to lift the visitor restriction for the mainland at 5 o'clock on Wednesday morning.
May the 6th,
May
yes,
the
sir.
Is there any further discussion?
I got another couple more questions. Just, Ms. Luana, does Hyde County have a confirmed case?
Yes, we do have one confirmed case.
Okay. Am I correct in what I've been told about the numbers that in the medical field, that it's presumed that if you have one case, that at least 10 more have it? Is that correct or incorrect information?
Well, the R naught is 2.5. That's how many people you can infect. I cannot speak to, I don't want to tell you wrong. I'm not going to say that it's 10 people. I can find that out, and I'll be glad to do that and let you know.
But just theoretically, then going off what you just said, if we have one person, they theoretically could have already infected 2.5 more people. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Okay, so potentially, with what you know, there's probably 3.5 cases here anyway already. I just want to verify that there is corona here, according to your statistics or facts or whatever, that typically they will at least give it to 2.5 more people. Correct, right?
Yes.
And I want to say something else, Commissioner Toppin. I absolutely agree with you. There ain't nobody sitting in this room or listening to this right now is going to decide who is and who is not going to die from this virus. It ain't going to matter. It ain't going to matter. It's going to get who it gets, and there's nothing we can do about it. We can take precautions, and we can try to wash our hands, but that's it. I did learn something very interesting, and I don't think I told you this last meeting. What religious group had the least amount of death rate during the Black Plague? You all know? During the 1400s, all the millions of people that died in Europe and all. The Jews. The Jewish people had a far less death rate than any other religious group. You know why? Because if you read the Old Testament, the Jews are required to wash their hands and bathe properly. And if their house gets mold in it, you tear the mold out and you haul it outside of town. Kind of like y'all did in Ocracoke, Tom, hauled it to the airport, get it out of town. But that's a fact. And that comes from washing hands. So that you can look back at history and just check back what went on. Washing your hands saves a lot of lives. I got a beautiful plaque in my bathroom. It says, wash your hands and say your prayers, because Jesus and germs are everywhere.
All right, is there any further discussion? No, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we will lift our visitor restriction on the mainland of Hyde County effective at 5 a.m. on Wednesday, May the 6th. Now I would like for the board to consider actions on Ocracoke Island. As you all know, that On the Ocracoke, we have already set a non-resident property owner restriction to be lifted on May the 11th. We set that date to follow suit with Dare County's staggered reentry of their non-resident property owners. And they will be coming in on the 4th, the 6th, and the 8th. Is that right, Dottie? Are you looking at that on your calendar?
You looked at theirs?
Yes, sir. 4th, the 6th, and the 8th, and then we'll
It was the first third of the month, and Wednesday, and then.
Yes, sir. And so we will follow suit behind Dare County, allowing our non-resident property owners to access Ocracoke starting on the 11th. And that's the action taken by this board. So tonight, I would like this board to consider and have some discussion in regard to Ocracoke Island and some narrative around when we would potentially look at lifting visitor restrictions. Tom, would you like to lead that conversation, sir?
Sure. What I'd like to do is to describe the recommendation that was made by our control group what day was that? It all blends together, doesn't it? Was it Friday? Yes, last Friday. Yeah, because we had met prior to that a week before on Friday. The control group met. It's a group that very broadly represents Ocracoke Island, both business interests and the interests of residents are represented there, as well as regular input during the meetings from state and federal partners. And we had a very lengthy discussion, and we addressed all of the issues that we're talking about here tonight in a community discussion format. And there were those who had extreme powerful concerns about public health, and those who have powerful concerns about the condition of our businesses on the island and the effect that this visitor restriction is having on those businesses. And in particular, the effect is accentuated by the fact that we had Hurricane Dorian on September 6th, and many of our businesses, most of our businesses, have been out of business since September 6th. So everything that all the other counties are experiencing in terms of the impact of this COVID virus and the stay-at-home orders, our businesses have been experiencing since September 6th. And I think it's important to say that those people who are arguing that we need to lift visitor restrictions and we need to get our businesses back up and running, those people who own those businesses and operate those businesses, they aren't making that argument because they want to trade off the almighty dollar for somebody's life. That's not what they're doing. They're trying to salvage their businesses. These are people, these aren't franchise businesses. This isn't, McDonald's and Wendy's. These are businesses that people have built. They put their lives into them. They put their fortune into them. They put their blood and sweat into them. And they're trying to salvage those businesses, and they have a legitimate case to make. And it's not selfishness, and it's not people who don't recognize the value of human life. And anybody who makes that argument does not know these business owners. I know them. I have a business here on the island. And I've also had this conversation as a part of a group, an ad hoc group of business owners from up in Dare County and Currituck County have been meeting online and talking about the same issues. These are not selfish people, and these are not evil people. These are people who are trying to salvage possibility of keeping their businesses afloat. So we've got that argument on the one hand, and on the other hand, we've got the argument that there are a lot of people on the island who are vulnerable. Part of that vulnerable population that we hear about And we know them as you do over on the mainland. We know them by name. We know who they are. I could make a list of who those people are. And we care about them. And it's a very, very difficult situation to consider lifting the visitor restrictions and opening up a greater possibility than already exists for that virus to come to this island. But the one thing that we've been doing, and the positive that's come out of this last, has it been a month? I don't know, it feels like at least that, of visitor restrictions and stay-at-home orders and this learning curve of how do we actually do this social distancing? It's one thing to say so, and it's another thing to actually implement it. And when you go around the island now and you go to the variety store and you go to the post office and other places, you see people get out of their cars and they put on a mask and they walk in. And you walk in and the workers are wearing masks and they're keeping a distance away, and everybody's being very conscious of, you go out, you do whatever business you have out, you come home, you wash your hands. While you're out, you use hand sanitizer. So there's a lot of that, and there's a learning curve to it. And I think we've gotten good at it, not just here on the island, but I think probably on the mainland and everywhere else in America. And so that's the positive. That's what's come out of this, is that we've learned how to do this. We've learned a lot about it. But I agree with Ben, and I agree with the property owners, the business owners on the island, that we can't do this forever. There's no way that we can keep this virus from coming to the island, and there's no way we can keep it from ever impacting the island. Realistically speaking, we just simply can't do it. So we've done what we can do in terms of growing and learning and understanding how to best deal with it. Those people who are in the most vulnerable populations, which statistically speaking, I suppose I'm one of them. But there are many who are much more vulnerable than I, who have underlying illnesses and have immunodeficiencies and those kinds of problems. They've learned a lot also in the last month about how to isolate themselves and quarantine themselves, and to work with their families and their friends to be sure that they get food and get the resources that they need and get a little bit of human contact with their family members and keep a distance from everybody else. And we've come a long ways, and I think that's what this is about. It's not about trying to stay shut down forever, because we just simply can't do that. And there are arguments that are made on both sides that carry good weight. There are no good answers. We had that conversation as a control group, and it went on for a good long time, and there were a lot of people who weighed in on it. And in the end, the control group made the recommendation that I'm bringing to the Board of Commissioners now, that we plan to lift the Ocracoke Island visitor restrictions starting on May 21st. And I'm bringing that recommendation to the Board of Commissioners on behalf of the control group, and I personally support that recommendation. It's coupled with the understanding, a few understandings. One is that the county and others who are in a position of being able to influence how our businesses are going to operate, and I say those people who can influence those businesses, meaning the business operators themselves, need to put into place some very clear and strict restrictions on what can happen in order to continue to minimize the speed that this virus can spread and how deep it can go into the community. And I think we have a good understanding among our business owners that they are willing to do that. The other understanding that comes with that recommendation is that it's a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, and that it's the expectation of the control group that the Board of Commissioners will be working with Dare County and Currituck County and with the state to consider regional and state interests in accepting this recommendation and acting on it. That's my report.
Tom, clarify, was that non-resident property owners on the 11th?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And
We-
then,
And that's a
already-
done,
okay,
that's a done deal.
that's done deal, okay.
We're talking about the visitor restriction now, and Commissioner Paul did a great job at synopsizing that meeting and that recommendation. And it was coupled, the recommendation of a pre-Memorial Day opening was coupled also with the desire to coordinate, most particularly with Dare County and to follow the governor's order. The governor in his press conference today stated that either tomorrow or Wednesday, he will be giving us further direction. And I have spoken with the Dare County manager in regard to the direction that they intend to take. And Commissioner Pugh has worked with the Dare County Board Chair. Would you like to add some comments about your work with the Dare County Board Chair, sir?
I did talk to the board chair, Commissioner Chairman Woodard, this afternoon, and we discussed openings for visitors. And he, like the rest of us here, where everything is in place to open. But they're wanting to wait until they get some direction from the governor's office this week. And he said that they should make a decision by maybe Wednesday or Thursday or by Friday anyway, what they're going to do, depending on what the governor says. But I think this needs to be a concerted effort between Currituck, Dare, and Hyde as they, when they release the statement, it should all be released at once, in my opinion. And I will have that conversation with Commissioner Woodard again tomorrow or maybe Wednesday, because they have a commissioners meeting tomorrow. But, and I know you've talked with the manager, and that was basically what he told you, I believe, with our conversation.
Yes, sir. So I think that our proposal to this board, if someone would consider it, would be to allow Chairman Pugh to negotiate a visitor reentry date prior to Memorial Day with Dare County over this next couple of days, and coordinate a Hyde County reentry with the Dare County reentry, and put out amend our state of emergency and put out a press release upon that coordination. And that would be my suggestion if somebody wants to consider that as a motion, or wants to consider another suggestion as a motion.
I'll make that as a motion.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is anybody had a motion by Commissioner Paul and a second by Commissioner Swindell? Is there any further discussion?
I would just say that in nothing that we pass tonight makes anybody open any, if they don't want to, correct?
That's correct.
If they want to stay closed, then we're not mandating them to do anything other than that, correct?
Right. We just opened it up to where people can come.
They can decide.
They can decide.
We will
And-
not. Go ahead, sir.
It's important to keep in mind that the action that we take to lift visitor restrictions, first off, is not immediate. We're suggesting the 21st or sometime shortly before Memorial Day. But none of that changes whatever restrictions the governor may have in place at that time. So if we lift visitor restrictions and the governor still has in place a stay-at-home order, we can't countermand that. We can only lift visitor restrictions. Just to keep that in mind.
And I think the recommendation from the control group was also that we would coordinate with Dare County, and we would abide by the governor's executive orders And well, now, and if he changes it, we'll still abide by his orders. Isn't that correct, Tom?
I think that's right, but it would not prevent us from lifting visitor restrictions, no matter what the governor did. The action to impose a visitor restriction was done by this board, and it can be lifted by this board regardless of what the governor does. But yes, we would agree. I think we should comply with whatever the governor recommends.
Yes, but I mean, other than the lifting the restriction, we will abide by the governor's orders.
That's my opinion, yes.
And we would be in our timing would be based on our neighboring counties, Dare and Currituck, and hopefully that we can make that announcement. It would be made all at one press release.
Yes, sir.
I would certainly hope so. We certainly the control group and I think, personally, I would be quite comfortable with a motion tonight to declare a lifting of visitor restrictions on May 21st, except for the agreement that we will make an effort to coordinate with Dare County. And I think that's a fine thing to do, and we should do it. It only makes sense because so many of our visitors come through Dare County. But if it should be that Dare County does not agree, by following the governor's press conference, if Dare County still has not come to an agreement on a date to lift visitor restrictions, I think we should go ahead and act without them if they're not able to do something by, say, Friday. I think I would be comfortable going ahead and acting without them.
Yes, sir. That's a part of the motion that's on the table.
And also, if we lift our restrictions before Dare does, the visitors that are going through Hatteras will not be able to get through. So all the visitors would have to either come Cedar Island or Sloan Quarter because they wouldn't have the documentation to get through the roadblocks in Dare County.
I think that's the case, yes.
Yes, it is. All right, is there
Which
any
is
further?
why Currituck couldn't go ahead with their lifting of visitor restrictions that they attempted to do even earlier, because Dare did not go along with that and wouldn't let them through. So in a certain extent, we have to coordinate with Dare, but I would rather that it was more like we want to coordinate with Dare and we'd like Dare to coordinate with us, rather than that we have to or they have to follow suit. And I think we're establishing that kind of a conversation.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Tom. All right.
Thank you all.
I will add that we will continue to be diligent in preparing our businesses, the ferry system, and all of our healthcare providers for those two opening dates for NRPOs on May 11th and visitors at a time to be established through a joint press release prior to Memorial Day.
Yes.
Moving forward, yes, thank you, sir. Moving forward, gentlemen, this is going to be a little bit of a sad point in recognition of our Hyde County friend of Hyde County this evening. We want to recognize Mr. John Fletcher. John, as we all know, passed away. His God-given name, John Stewart Fletcher II of Hyde County, passed away at home on Sunday, April the 12th, following a blessedly brief battle with cancer. Mr. Fletcher was preceded in death by his dear wife, Miss Jean Mincy Fletcher, his grandson, John Stewart Fletcher III, his sister, Carolista Tootsie Golden. He is survived by his sons, John Dixon and Donald Hay Fletcher, daughter-in-laws, Dawn Delano and Susan DeLucia Fletcher. his grandchildren, Charles Dixon and Madison Eleanor Fletcher, his brothers, David and James Fletcher, and Mark and Dosey Pruden and their families. And Jock was a nickname for Mr. Fletcher that expressed his affinity for horses and steeplechase riding. He was well known for his quick wit, his sharp mind, and his giving heart. His love of people and his ability to talk to anyone made him a well-known and loved personality. When there was a charity to help or a person in need, he was quick to make a donation. He was quick to lend a hand. Mr. Fletcher was the son of a Navy officer. He lived his early years in California, D.C., Annapolis, and Edenton, North Carolina. In 1957, he graduated from Valley Forge Military Academy, where he proudly served as a mounted cadet and a squad leader. After earning his Juris Doctor degree from UNC Chapel Hill, he began his legal career in Greenville with Frank Wooten in '62. In addition to his law practice, he spent time creating what is now the Law Enforcement Training Program in Pitt Community College, and he served as an administrator and an instructor there. He also taught in the School of Business at East Carolina University, and he was an advisor to several service groups in the TKE fraternity. During his time in Greenville, he earned his Juris Master degree from New York University. He supported his alma maters faithfully. For his career and his love of travel, Mr. Fletcher took his family to Ottawa, Canada to become a professor of law at the University of Ottawa. He enjoyed his time there. He made lifelong friends, and he made numerous trips back to the country during his lifetime. Now, to fulfill Mr. Fletcher's dream of practicing law of a small town in eastern North Carolina, he moved to his forever home in Hyde County. He arrived in Swanquarter in 1972, and his love for the county and its residents began immediately, and he spent the next 48 years being a productive and giving member of the community. During his career, he served as county attorney, county commissioner, and magistrate. One of his proudest contributions was his pro bono work for the Hyde County Social Services, where he worked on behalf of children and those that could not help themselves. Mr. Fletcher's contributions to the county may best be represented by the flood control dike that was completed around Swanquarter. He began work on this project in 1962 while in Greenville, and he started and stopped that work over the next 5 decades until completion of the project in 2010. During that time, he did research, negotiations, lobbying, funding, permitting, planning, and he helped bring that project to fruition. Being an attorney in a small town, he was always in tune with the community. He did whatever was necessary to help others, meeting on their schedule, offering friendly advice, telling sometimes the very inconvenient truth and not mind doing it, driving a grain truck during picking season or working out payment plans. Many times he received a bushel of oysters or a duck decoy as payments for his services. After he built his vacation home on Ocracoke, he spent many weekends and vacations and retired there, roaming the beach and the island, making friends and taking on causes to help others. He spent his weekends closing loans, writing wills, and providing legal services to those that could not travel off island. He knew and he loved the history of the island, its families, and the historic property deeds that included descriptions such as the big cedar tree in Monk's Garden. At this time, we would like to honor Commissioner John Fletcher. And I will open the floor to any of the board members that would like to say anything about former Commissioner John Fletcher.
I would say that when I come on as commissioner, and I told him this, I said he wasn't exactly my favorite person. But by the time he got off, I had a huge respect for John. He looked at things from a legal standpoint that a lot of times that we as the other commissioners, not being attorneys, didn't understand. And he was a great benefit for this county. And I'll miss his calls and he called once in a while just to talk to me about stuff going on and, we ended up being really good friends and so, he'll be missed.
I knew him personally when I was young, and then as a magistrate, or as a lawyer, and then as a magistrate when I was in the sheriff's office. And to say that Mr. Fletcher was a character would not fit on one page. If I ever write my book about the characters of Hyde County, he'll take at least a chapter for him. But anyway, his wit and the way he looked at things, it took a while to digest at first, but it was a very well-rounded, almost international approach to things that really made you see the world through his eyes, and it was quite a perception.
Tom, you have anything?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not from around here. I don't know if any of you noticed that. John was, he and I were politically, we, kind of butt heads, but in a way that I came away with a lot of respect for him. He was not an easy person to be on the opposite side of. He was very well studied and a man that you don't want to take lightly in a debate. But I like John and I would say that I regret that I'm not even a quarter as entertaining as John was as commissioner, and I'm very sorry to see him go.
Well, I met John and Gene both, and I attended, it was that time, Pitt Technical Institute in 1968 through 70. John was teaching law enforcement, and Miss Jean was the guidance counselor. So I met them a long time ago, and I got to know John and her. And he used to call me. My mama was in a nursing home, and he would call me and want to know if it was all right if he'd go pick her up and carry her maybe to a church bazaar or something. So that meant a lot to our family. And in fact, I got to talk to John the week before he passed away. He's called every week or maybe every 2 weeks. He would call, and I'm going to miss those calls and conversations because he had an opinion, and when you got through talking to him, you knew exactly what it was. He will be missed.
John was kind of person that until you got to know him, I don't think you really knew him. I worked for John over there on the island for about 2 months, and I stayed in one of his cottages, me, my wife, and my whole crew. And at night, I asked John, what can I do? He said, well, you can come by here and eat with me and Jane if you want to. I said, well, we're going to go out to the pub or something, get us something to eat. And then if we have time, we'll come back around and sit and talk with you. Well, to sit and talk with John was a task. Because he had all the answers already. But he was a good man, him and his wife both, and I love both of them dearly. And his sons as well. I got real close to JD, his son, and they're just good people all around. And he's certainly definitely going to be missed.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, at this time, we'll move on to public comments.
Well, I know we can't make any live public comments, but I believe you have some public comments that you need to read.
Yes, sir. And so you have all your public comments that have been, Donnie, do you want to describe the public comment process since we're in the virtual world?
Steal your mic there, Shannon. Is that all right? So we set up multiple avenues to collect public comment. It could be emailed to Lois. I set up a voicemail box with a dedicated phone number that people could call in and leave a detailed message if they wanted it played. Nobody has taken us up on that offer 2 months running. Just saying out there, there's a phone number you could call. We also took web submissions that would be forwarded to myself, to Chris and Lois to be read. And that's what's been used mostly so far.
Under items of consideration, Ordinances and resolutions. You have a proclamation for the Older Americans Month 2020. Every May, the Administration for Community Living leads our nation's observer of Older Americans Month. This year's theme is Make Your Mark, and it was selected to encourage and celebrate countless contributions that older adults make to our communities. Their time, their experiences, and their talents. Communities, organizations, and individuals of all ages are also making their mark, and this year's theme highlights the difference everyone can make in the lives of older adults in support of caregivers and to strengthen our communities. I would like to ask the Hyde County Board of Commissioners right now to adopt this proclamation naming May Older Americans Month with the theme of Make Your Mark, May 2020.
Do I hear a motion to adopt the proclamation of Older Americans Month?
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Simmons. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Swindell. Any discussion? Not all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carried.
The next item of consideration is a project budget ordinance for the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency Temporary Cash Assistance Program. If you'll remember, in the April meeting, this board accepted a loan from the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency in the amount of $1 million. That money is being utilized to cash flow our county expenditures while awaiting our FEMA reimbursements. This project budget ordinance sets the budget, and if you look at the detail, it will be utilized in $1 million proceed from North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency and utilized as loan proceeds for cash flow assistance while awaiting FEMA reimbursement. And I ask this board to adopt that project budget ordinance.
Is there a motion to adopt the project budget ordinance?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Swindell. Do I hear a second? Second by Commissioner Simmons. Is there any discussion? Not all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
I am following our live feed, and we're getting a lot of comments about, are we going to read the public comments? There's no way we can read all these public comments. We received tons of public comments, and we would be here until tomorrow if we read each one aloud. But our commissioners have been supplied with those public comments, and they have reviewed those public comments. And if the general public would like to view them, I'm sure Donnie can upload them.
Can you just give an overview of maybe most of the comments was about reentry for non-resident homeowners?
I would get in serious trouble trying to do that without preparation, sir. We received tons of public comments for this meeting.
Right.
And honestly, it would be best just to post those for public viewing because I know you all have reviewed those.
Okay, that would be fine.
They would need to be officially added to the, and so put into public.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that comment. Are they going to be posted on the website?
They will be put in the records of the meeting, so they will be, and they will be posted, is that correct? They will be.
And they have to be part of the minutes.
And they're part of the minutes too, Tom.
Okay, but we won't see the minutes for another, next month, the minutes come for the board for approval, and then they wouldn't be published until after that, so there'd be more than a month lag time. Can we publish those comments more promptly than that?
Yes. Yes, we can go ahead and publish them. And
Yeah, I do regret that the comments, while a good number of them are critical of some of the actions that I'm proposing, I still think they should be heard and as promptly as possible.
yes, sir, there's no physical way. We would be here until after midnight to read every single letter, and they are well over 3 minutes, as we would typically do a 3-minute. These are pages and page letters, and Donnie and I have followed the School of Government advice in regard to public comment during these times and also looked at our surrounding counties. And this will be approved to have these letters presented to the commissioners for their review and posted on our website.
Okay, I would just recommend that we post them sooner rather than later.
Donnie, how soon can you do it, sir? It'll be done by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Project, but our next item of consideration is a project budget ordinance for the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency State Grant. This was a grant that the Hyde County Board of Commissioners accepted last month in the amount of $500,000 from the Office of North Carolina Recovery and Resiliency.
Muted now.
Thank you, Tony.
That wasn't me.
This $500,000 grant will allow for Hyde County to contract with an experienced individual to assist the county with FEMA programs, the reimbursement, managing project documentation. Individual also assists the county with long-term recovery and resiliency planning. It provides for a staff position for a grant administrator to work with local staff, consultants, state and federal partners to manage grant funding, including CDBG, DR, HMGP, FMA, Golden Leaf, OSBM, and other funding sources. It will fund the Ocracoke Affordable Housing Study in regard to fulfill some general payroll obligations. This grant was accepted in the April meeting, and this is the project budget ordinance that shows detail in the revenue and the expenditures for this project.
Do I hear a motion to approve the project budget ordinance for $500,000?
So moved.
So move.
Have a motion by Commissioner Swindell and a second by Commissioner Paul. Is there any discussion? If none, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
The next item on your agenda will be the Hyde County Minimum Housing Code Officer appointment.
We got
I did, yes, sir, I'm sorry. I
my
apologize.
resolution.
I'm determined not to adopt that resolution. Your next item of consideration is a resolution to ratify board action amendment number 4. And Justin had to drop off, but this resolution will actually, was the reentry date for non-resident property owners on the island, date of May 11th, and we're asking the board to ratify that resolution that's been made in the month of April.
So moved.
Have a motion to ratify the resolution by Commissioner Simmons, second by Commissioner Paul. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Tom, I heard you after Ben. That's why I figured that you would second it. He made the motion before I heard you make it. So.
That's all right. I think there's a little bit of a lag time.
There is a
It takes
little bit.
while for the
He's-
words to get all the way across the sound.
Ben's fast.
Your next item on your agenda is an appointment as the Hyde County Minimum Housing Code Officer. And tonight I would like to recommend that Hyde County appoint our building inspector, Mr. Rumley Everett, as the Hyde County Minimum Housing Code Officer.
We have a recommendation to appoint Mr. Rumley Everett as minimum housing code officer. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Simmons
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Swindell. Is there any discussion? Not all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
You get a new hat.
Get a red hat.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. Next item on your agenda is the Solar Energy Facilities Building Inspection Fee Schedule. We are adopt a new inspections fee schedule for solar energy facilities. Ms. Jane Hodges is here in the audience if you have any questions for her on this new fee schedule. Don't have a new permit too for it.
If we don't feel that, we don't get it, so I'm not going to make Ms. Jane mad, but.
Can you describe what the change is?
In your packet, on the next to the last page, you'll see item number 33, which is your commercial solar farm fee of $1,000. On the last page, you'll see the first 200 panels are $5 a piece. 201 on up is $1 a piece. This fee is non-refundable. Once we get it, we keep it. There will be no maximum, as you see in some other ordinances. And they have to submit to us 60 days prior to the date of review by the Hyde County Board of Commissioners. Applicants that apply for a solar farm permit may not contact board members to discuss their application outside of the public hearing. Ex parte communication is prohibited by NC state law, and board members who participate in these discussions shall be recused from voting on the application. Any questions?
What constitutes a commercial solar farm versus somebody who wants to put up a bunch of panels in their yard?
That's up to y'all in your ordinance.
Tom, right now, the county is working on a solar energy facility ordinance. The fee schedule is ready. The solar energy facilities ordinance will hopefully be heard in June. There's a differentiation in the home solar panel units or systems are excluded from major solar farm development. They're completely two different entities and they're dealt with separately, and that'll be defined in your ordinance. And so Ms. Jane did have the fee schedule ready, but we still have some work to do before we give you the full ordinance. The ordinance is not designed in any way to prevent people from having personal solar panels on their homes. This ordinance is to regulate the building of large-scale solar farms, and that will be coming to you in the month of June. There are currently no restrictions on solar development on your home outside of North Carolina Building Code restriction.
My immediate reaction is that until we know what the ordinance says and that we can distinguish between a commercial solar farm and somebody who wants to put up, say, 20 panels in their yard, until we can know what that difference is, I'm not inclined to want to set a fee schedule.
Okay, we'll table it till next month.
Gotcha.
Next item, do we need?
Well, is that an agreement with the rest of the board to table that till next month? Hearing no objection, we'll table that until next month.
Thank you.
Next item on your agenda is the FAA approval of agreement for the transfer of entitlement funds.
So moved.
Have a motion to approve the transfer of entitlement funds. Do I hear a second? A motion was made by Commissioner Swindell. Do I hear a second? So have a second by Commissioner Simmons. Is there any discussion? Now this is money that wasn't used in time, and so it goes back to the state. Is that correct?
Yes, because the state is funding our runway extension, our happy lights, our windsock, those projects in full. The money that we had saved to go towards that is now being asked to be given back to the state and will be transferred to Odell Williamson Municipal Airport. That is the town of Ocean Isle Beach. They will be receiving those funds.
So the state funded the projects that we were going to do totally, so we did not need that.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. Next item on your agenda is the DAA form designation for COVID-19. COVID-19 has been declared a federal disaster. We would like for the board tonight to adopt a resolution designating our applicant agent. We would like to name our primary and secondary agents, and those agents are authorized to execute and file applications under FEMA for federal and state assistance on behalf of Hyde County. We'd like to name our primary agent as Ms. Corinne Gibbs and our secondary agent as Mr. Justin Gibbs.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Paul. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Swindell. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor, let it be number saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Next item on your agenda is the CDBG Neighborhood Revitalization Asbestos Inspection Services Contract Award. Nine vendors submitted proposals for Hyde County CDBG Neighborhood Revitalization Asbestos Inspection Services. We suggest and recommend that the Hyde County Board award the Hyde County CDBG Neighborhood Revitalization Asbestos Inspection Services contract to W.F. Bulow Inspections, who scored the highest on the ranking.
Do I hear a motion to approve F.W. Bulow for asbestos inspections?
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Swindell. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Simmons. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
Finally, we have our NCPDS Community Program County Funding Plan, and this will be presented by Natalie Berry Wayne. Natalie?
Good evening. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On behalf of the Hyde County Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, I would like to thank you all for your continued support of our NCDPS community programs. I think in your packets, you should all have the proposed 2020-21 county funding plan. The two programs that have been in place for a while, the Hyde County Schools Hyde Intervention and Prevention Program, and also the Hyde County 4-H Hyde Kids Program. We are asking if you will support this county funding plan with a 10% match, as y'all currently always do, with the amount of $5,906.
Do I hear a motion to approve the 10% match?
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Swindell, second by Commissioner Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Is this meant to be a part of the 2021 budget?
Yes, sir. This is the 2021 budget. Yes, sir.
Okay, and this matches what's in the current budget?
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Is there any further discussion? Not, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
That concludes our regular agenda items of consideration. We can now move into budget matters. You have budget amendments before you for the Department of Social Services, the Hyde County Health Department, and the Sheriff's Department. I would recommend that you adopt these as a blanket adoption. They do not increase the budget. We are only transferring money to other lines.
Do I hear a motion to approve the budget amendments?
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Swindell. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Simmons. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Gentlemen, it's time for managers' reports. Mr. Toppin, do you have anything to report?
Oh, I have a little. I have some information here for you, Mr. Chairman, in reference to another fund. I think what you're asking to try to pull together for you, either to be distribution and plan. You said a plan, so I assume that this will cover everything that you need
Right.
to know about it. I got a call from Senator Steinberger's office about 2 weeks ago. And he stated to me that they had put it in the budget from the state level. And then I got a call last week from Ed, his assistant, informing me that he was, looked like to me, requesting the money.
Right.
And I had spoke with Miss Luana about how did they administer the last that they gave to people. And based on the way that they did it, this is a little more in depth, we have to do a little more, but it will be handled through the health department. Ms. Paula Spencer is gonna purchase it for us once we get the money in there. And she will help us even as far as distributing it. I have a young man that has a master's degree in biology or chemical, and he's willing to take on the task for sitting at the site and distributing, showing people how to mix it in a safe form.
Is that a paid position?
Well, it will, but we have the funds to, $75,000, what's requested, which will be more than enough to purchase, enough for the people in the county and somebody to distribute.
Is that, now with purchasing that, with government funds, would that have to be put out on bids?
What has to be put out on bids?
The purchase of the Malafon, you're using county money, wouldn't that have to be put out on bids?
So it's not county money.
What if he gives it,
It's a special fund for that purpose.
Yeah, but I'm still saying it's going to go through our county budget. And to purchase something, it would have to be put out on bids.
Well, whatever we have to do to get it, that's no
Yeah.
problem.
Is that correct, Fred? I mean, before we could,
But that's no problem.
okay.
We can work that out, as far as buying. But, we have somebody that's willing to buy it and store it. Keep that in mind. They're willing to store it and buy it at will. If we need, 400 gallon, we get 400 gallon. We need 5 more 100 gallon, they'll get 5 more 100 gallon. And they'll store it for us in their warehouse and help distribute it to the sites like in Englehart Park. I'm just using throwing these out there,
Right.
like Slater's, fire station. And they will set up a date and time that the people could come out, sign for it, and pick it up.
The other thing I say is, but you call the names of somebody you're gonna buy it from and who's gonna run it. When you're doing something through good government money, you've got to have it under contract, or it's got to be bid.
Well, that's all come with get the money. Until we get some money, you can't do nothing, only on hearsay and promises.
All right, okay, well, in fact, you've got, it's been put in the budget, is what you're saying.
Well,
It's been asked for in the state budget. Is that
Yeah,
right?
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And he talked about that. We're gonna get it. And with Ms. Luana's help, I think we can work through the little huddles that we're gonna have to cross.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. Ms. Johnson called me about the time frame that she had to try to do her dog pen or something. I told her to give you a call because you was on that committee and that maybe you could help her with that. Buying some time, for the weather wasn't good, and with this other stuff going on, she was having a time trying to meet the deadline. I said, well, you talk to me.
Well, I don't, that's up to her and the animal control officer. Because I was just on that committee. I mean, I don't have anything to do with that. But she did call
Okay, well, that's all, that's about it.
me. Okay. All right. Jenna?
We got a lot accomplished here tonight. We're setting a timeline for opening back up and giving these small businesses some hope. And it comes up every couple of months. I'm just going to reiterate personal responsibility in the face of pandemic, in the face of our requests from government, our daily activities and businesses we support and how we conduct ourselves through this pandemic. It only works if we take our personal responsibility. There's laws and resolutions that are continually broken. You can go into town on a daily basis and you can put all the ordinances out you want about masks and personal distancing, but it comes down to personal responsibility. So I just keep stressing that. But I'm thankful for the resilience this county has portrayed and the feedback that we've gotten. And it's a tough time. We're in uncharted waters.
Ben?
I'd just like to just reiterate what Shannon said. A lot of this is gonna come down to people making good decisions for themselves and try to help with the ones around them. I would also just want to say that, like the Lowe's thing, I went by Lowe's last Friday on Highway 33. You can put another person in the parking lot. And so that, anyway, we've done going over that bridge. I would like to apologize, Commissioner Toppin. I get a little flustered sometimes about stuff, but I'm very passionate for the things I believe in, and I believe in private entity. I do believe that no government can function without a strong private sector. I take that very personal because I've been on the receiving end of people not allowing me to do what I had every right to do. And so I apologize for how I kind of got gruff about it, but I meant everything I said. I don't take back the words I said. I take the tone I said it. So I apologize for that. But again, I think everybody just needs to be careful. Had a drainage meeting this past week, Fairfield drainage stuff. We've got our FEMA project is complete, and I think according to the email I got today, we should be getting our final FEMA check for doing some repairs that we had done through FEMA. So that's looking pretty up and up with all that. Yesterday, I watched Brett Favre play football. I watched a football game from 1996. I watched Dallas Cowboys, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith. So that was a lot of fun. I'm ready to see some little league ball games. So I'm ready to get that back to the reality. So, but anyway, thank everybody, and I want everybody to know that just like everybody at this table, I know everybody in this room and on TV cares about this county. And like I say, we have a lot of different perspectives. And Tom, I would like to take my hat off to you because you very eloquently said what I was trying to say, but I'm not quite that eloquent. So hopefully maybe you had your wife in the corner coaching you. I don't know, but you did great.
He was holding up I was just reading it while she held up the signs.
Okay, you did great, but that's it.
Thank you, Ben.
Tom?
Yeah, I think I would like to take this time to comment on some of the public comments that we received in writing, and a good number of those public comments are from the non-resident property owners from Ocracoke who are upset that they were blocked from coming to the island. Up until next week on the 11th, they'll be allowed back on. First, let me start by saying that the non-resident property owners were just unbelievably generous and helpful following Hurricane Dorian. We would not have been able to recover the way we did without them. We had over 400 people, that's 40% of our population, were displaced from that hurricane, and a good number of them, I might say most of them, found housing on the island that was provided by non-resident property owners who were currently not in those houses and could not occupy those houses because of the evacuation order, and because of their generosity, they stepped aside and allowed people to live in those homes, in a lot of cases rent-free, in some cases for just the cost of utilities. It was extremely generous, and it was such an enormous contribution to the recovery that it would be a terrible oversight if we didn't recognize that. Having said that, the thinking that went into excluding non-resident property owners from coming to the island following the COVID virus shutdown was difficult for that very reason, because we so much appreciated the generosity that those non-resident property owners put forward following the hurricane. And it wasn't an easy decision to make. And I know that a good number of them, if you read those letters, you'll know that they're not happy about that and feel that they had been denied their property rights. And I appreciate that. I apologize for it. It was a decision that our control group recommended. It was a decision that I recommended, and a decision ultimately that this board approved, and it was the right decision for the same reason that everybody else was put out and inconvenienced and put out of work and businesses shut down. There were so many people that have been hurt in so many ways by the effect of this pandemic. It's a worldwide pandemic, and millions of people have been hurt and put out by it, including our non-resident property owners. I apologize for that, but I believe that we made the right decision at the right time, and I believe that we made the right decision again at the right time to lift the restriction on non-resident property owners starting next week. But I do want them to know that we remain extremely grateful for their participation in our community, for the role that they played in the past, and hopefully for the role that they're going to play going forward. And nothing about that restriction was intended to attack them personally, but only to try to accomplish what I think we have accomplished, and that is to create a somewhat safer environment going forward. That's my report. Thanks.
On that, I'd just like to add that I am a non-resident homeowner of Ocracoke, and I have not been able to go either. So help make a resolution that kept me away. So, but I understand the feelings of people that do, but I think that from what the residents, the local people in Okotoks have been through, it was our duty of what we've done to help them. I reckon the rest of this last meeting spent probably much time on the telephone talking about the coronavirus and the opening of the county, and hopefully that the decisions we made tonight will get visitors back and get the economy going to what extent it can very shortly. And I just appreciate the patience that everybody's had, and I have had some emails and text messages from business owners and from Okotoks, and I appreciate them sending those, because you need to hear what people are thinking so you can make good decisions. And I think the decision we have made tonight will help us in the future. Chris?
Yes, sir. I would like to summarize the public input. It fell into 3 categories. One letter from our public input revolved around recommendations for public health education ideas on the island after reentry. And our health department is working with that citizen right now to talk through her recommendations and try to take any of her recommendations as possible and put into our education plan. We also had a tremendous number of letters, or I'd say several letters from businesses on the island asking for a reentry date for visitors. We also received a tremendous number of letters from our non-resident property owners, and I will not summarize these because I will not put words into their mouths. And it's not an effort to shut down the comments, it's just the sheer volume, and I will work with our IT director to get these posted immediately. Our board has read these, have been provided with all of these letters, all of these comments. And I have personally reviewed every comment, and it's not an effort not to take them into consideration, but it would take quite literally hours to read these. And I will not paraphrase them because I will not put words into people's mouths. But it is, what I'd like to do is work with Donnie to get them posted, because I've seen them, our board's seen them, and so for the general public, we'll get them posted in the next 24 hours at the very most. We're going to get it done really quickly. I don't want to speak for Donnie, but I'd be willing to stay late to post them if he would. Yeah, I've just got an ugly look. So the first thing I'd like to say we've been working on over the last, since our last meeting, is working on the COVID crisis. We have worked to put necessary restrictions in place, and also worked to try to look towards a plan to release those restrictions as soon as possible. We have been working with our health providers to get ideas of what we needed to have in place to lift restrictions, increase testing capacity, increase personal protective gear, the ability to have contact tracers on ready and trained to move forward. We've also been working with the ferry division to prepare them to deal with COVID, our general public, our businesses, our medical responders, and our county staff. And it's took a tremendous amount of our time to deal with COVID, but we've also done some work to evolve our Board of Equalization and Review process. We've done some work to try to get that Board of Equalization and Review process more public and more digital, and I really appreciate you guys taking that proactive step. We will be delivering your budget message on May the 14th to this board and presenting a budget to you on June 1st. I will tell you that we are expecting some very major, severe revenue shortfalls from the state budget in regard to our budget this year. And you'll hear more about that in the budget message on May 14th, and you'll see it on June the 1st. We had a hazard mitigation plan meeting here, and it was also posted digitally in last week. And the last thing I'd like to review with you all is I don't want the actions taken in the United States Census to be forgotten moving forward, because throughout all of the processes we've been going through in the pandemic, we still are completing our 2020 census. And I really wanted to say something about that census in my manager's report. The United States Census is more than a head count. It's a snapshot of America and of Hyde County, and it determines not only how congressional seats are appropriated, but how federal and state funds are distributed. These population calculations for the United States Census are based on the total resident population of a county. And the federal government bases a large amount of its spending decisions on those resident populations that are reported through census data. 132 government programs use census data to allocate more than $675 billion to serve our lower income families, our schools, Medicare, highway spending, just to name a few. One of the largest areas of funding comes from resident counts that are found in census data, and that is for the planning of various health and wellness programs. So we count our resident populations in order to plan for various health and wellness programs. Scientists use census data to understand the spread of diseases and our health concerns, just like COVID-19. And these counts of our resident population are used to drill down to public health patterns across demographics in order to deal with public health crises like COVID-19. Our public health officials use this data to target interventions, invest in medical infrastructure, and be ready to serve our population. You should count yourself at the place where you are living, where you are sleeping, at the most of your time as of April 1st, 2020. And you can do that in 3 ways. You can go to my2020census.gov. You can use a phone 844-330-2020, or you can mail in that paper questionnaire that came in your mailbox. However you choose to respond to the census, I hope that you will. I responded online. It took me less than 5 minutes, and I encourage you all to make sure that you do that before our next meeting.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to recess this meeting until May the 14th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Simmons. There is a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Swindell. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We are recessed until May 14th. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
You too, Tom.